Yes, just like that. It is Thursday. It is 9. So, of course, it means UK Cowboys time. How are we doing, Mr. LC?
Yeah, we're doing not too bad. As I was just saying to you off air there, my lad passed his driving test today, so um, it started the morning. I had a knot in my stomach worrying about it because he did a bad lesson yesterday, and got the call at lunchtime to say he'd passed. So from that point on, the day was plain sailing. So
Yeah. And like I said, now you no longer have to worry when you get drunk. You have your taxi ready and
yep,
available.
definitely.
So, yeah, that's the big news. Thanks for watching, and we're back next week. So yeah, I mean, it was obviously you and Brian last week doing the inside defensive lineman. You can tell I've been away, and I'm still not completely with it because we've completely dismissed defensive end and gone to linebacker this week. But it does not matter. We will go to
Yep.
the defensive ends next week, and plus a few of the other guys will be back next week. So we kind of get. I don't want to say the linebackers are bad, and I don't even want to say it's a bad position for the Cowboys. It's the most questionable of all the positions. On defense.
Yeah, it has potential to be good, but there's a lot of question marks
There's the questions.
against all these guys. I mean, you've got guys that have either had injuries, coming back off injuries. You know, our starting potentially our starting three have all been injury prone,
Yep.
all had various operations throughout their careers, and you know, you could be talking one hit away. And especially, again, we were talking offline there that, because you're 2-3 yards back, if you're going up against a running back who's up to full speed, then, it's the force that's going through you is magnified. And if you tackle at the wrong angle or whatever, that can be a season ending injury for you, or
Yeah.
even career ending. So,
Yeah. And like I was saying to you, of all the positions in the NFL, like obviously, there's probably been times where I'm being close, especially around Christmas time, where I'm heavy enough to play defensive tackle. But of all the positions in the NFL, the one I would not play, certainly out of the three positions, it would be Mike linebacker. There's just no chance. I mean, that they take a beating.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
there's a bit of breaking news that's come through. We've signed
mm,
another kicker.
we have, yes. That was coming through. It came through about an hour ago. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I know you've given your initial, like what you've said about the position. Let us know at home as well, guys, what you think. But on a scale of 1 to 10, Lorne, how would you rate this linebacker core in comparison to all the others in the NFL?
I'd probably say it is perhaps one of the better linebacking cores. So I'd say it's certainly better than average. So
Okay.
we'll give it a 6.
A 6.
Um,
Yeah, there we go. That's what I would have given it. But go on, carry on.
yeah, I mean, as I say, I mean, Leighton Van Der Esch, has been Pro Bowl. He's, obviously, again, the injuries and what have you
Yeah.
last year, or he didn't live up to his rookie contract. So, we never took on his 5th year option, signed him to a better deal last year. And, he repaid it in spades. And I
He did
mean,
redeem
you,
himself, yeah.
you can bet that he was probably one of the Pro Bowl alternates last year, maybe.
Oh,
Um, and you again, as we were talking last week about interior defensive line, when Hankins went down, Van Der Esch went down as well, and you saw the impact of these guys, and they came back at just the right time, ready to take
yeah.
on Tom Brady and co. And slow down the running game, so that Brady was the one that had to win that game for them, and Brady couldn't do it.
Mm.
Um, you know, and from that point of view, that's good. What you got out of Damone Clark last year as well was good. But everybody behind him, there was a lot of question marks about. And, that's nowadays in this NFL, you only use two linebackers generally
Oh
anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You're always in
but
a nickel defense nowadays.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
there will be areas, especially if we're talking about running games and everything like that. Teams will be looking to keep our running game off the field, so they'll be putting their running game on,
Hmm.
and you might see a bit more three linebacker stuff going on this year.
Yeah. I think maybe perhaps it depends because I mean, we'll get into it with Jabril Cox, and that's really dependent on how Cox kind of has developed and how he's recovered from the ACL. We'll get into him in a little bit, and we'll talk about his situation. But we got mentioned at the top that the Cowboys have signed a kicker. They have. His name is Brandon Aubrey from the USFL's Birmingham Stallions.
Yep.
Details on the contract will obviously come. I can't imagine it's going to be anything. It's going to be a sort of a minimum type deal coming from the USFL.
Yeah. Chances are it won't be much more than what Vizcaino's on at the moment. So
Yeah, Vizcano, yeah,
yeah.
definitely. But just to give you some information, so he made 14 of 15 field goals last season and made all 35 extra points. So there we go.
And the main thing is there's going to be a kicking battle in camp. So
It needed the competition, didn't it? For sure. I
yeah,
mean, like, especially when this is the crazy bit with kicker, is that like we've lost our long snapper, so obviously bad injury happens. There we go. Yeah, and they didn't keep Overton, so he went too. So you bring in a new long snapper. So you bring in Trent C, who's with the Raiders. He's literally at the moment long snapping to nobody.
yeah,
He's into all right, Viz Kano, but let's be fair. I can't see him being the kicker. I can't. It just does not make sense at all for him to be the Cowboys kicker going into the season. Like that's even worse than what we've had in the past. I'm not
yeah,
saying that he's a bad kicker, but just in terms of what is going on there. So what you really want when it comes to your long snapper and your kicker, and with your punter too, is they just need time snapping together. Just how they snap, how they hold, how they kick. Like there's just tiny little minute little details that need to come in. Like, listen, when there's the kick is at this distance, can we have the ball come in at this angle? Can we have it coming in a bit faster, a bit slower? Can I have it at this height? All these little things come into play. And there's only one way that they're going to know how to do that, and that is just spending time practicing doing it. And at the moment, when you haven't got your kicker practicing doing it, you kind of lose a massive question on what happens when it comes into the season. Because like these bad snaps that you see happen, or these kicks that go out, usually it's because everything goes wrong from the start.
yeah,
When you look at it, and that just purely comes down to those three guys. It's your three guys: snapper, holder, and kicker. They just need to be on the same page. It's all rhythm. It's rhythm and it's flow.
yeah. And there was seemingly there was rumors last year that Garibay and who who was in camp
And
with him.
I'm trying to think of the other guy.
Yeah, they were both struggling because there was this this injury that was happening with the long snapper that was maybe beginning to play in training camp as well. That
Hmm.
there was something wrong with the snaps. There was whether it was the snap, the hold, or whatever. There was something wrong with that exchange, and that was why these guys were having difficulties. But
Yeah.
not to mention that Oxnard also is quite a windy place at
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
and it's got
But
a
that's not a bad thing.
wicked swirl. No, I mean, obviously, we could have done with that for practice when the two kicks I think that Maher missed early on in the season were long kicks in windy conditions at
Yeah, yeah,
Giant Stadium, and I think it was Philadelphia as well was the other one. So
yeah.
they were both difficult places to kick in. So um,
Yes. Yeah, so interesting addition. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll let you know the details of the contract when it comes in. It is on our social media that we posted up, so go check
Yep.
it out. Have a look at it. So we'll start off at the top then with our linebacker talk. Some people will find this controversial, or it may think it makes sense. Micah Parsons is not on this list. I've kept him on the pass rusher list. Defensive end pass
Yep.
rusher. Think that makes sense, don't you?
I do. I mean, from what the description is, he's a pass rushing linebacker. But Micah's obviously he's coming into camp. He's aiming to be 255. He
Yeah.
wants to be. He's basically saying he's most likely going to be a defensive lineman now. Obviously, Dan Quinn doesn't want to tip the hat off that way, but Dan Quinn uses variable fronts. 9 times out of 10, Micah will have his hand down on the floor. 10 time, the 10th time he'll have his 2 point stance or bicycle stance, as you call it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, like, the best way to is, yeah, okay, he is a linebacker, but he's a Leo. Is that's the way to look at it. So
Yep.
he's a pass rushing linebacker that moves between sort of 3 different spots to rush from. So yeah, and so really what we're saying at this point is linebacker 1 is Leighton Vander Esch. So we'll get into it. And you mentioned at the start that they didn't give him the 5th-year option, which kind of, it did make sense.
Yep.
I actually think that he shopped around, couldn't get a good deal, because a lot of teams are scared of Leighton Vander Esch because of the injury. Whereas with the Cowboys, they are aware of the injury, they know, and they're happy to give the money that they believe he's worthy of based on the risk assessment, if you like, from his medical report.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's why Leighton Vander Esch, the 5th-year option, he kind of went out, felt the waters, didn't like it, came back, and they gave him the offer. Played well enough to redeem himself. At that point, right, and this is why I think he can't get on another team, or another team, the offers they're giving him are worse than what the Cowboys are offering. I think that's the case because when he played that 5th year, at that point, he could have been like, I've redeemed myself enough now where people will offer me a contract. And he didn't. And now he signed a 2-year deal with the Cowboys. That, to me, it's not so much of LVE wanting to stay in Dallas, more that other teams aren't willing to take the risk on him. What do you think?
I think there is an element of both. I mean, obviously, the Cowboys have shown, the willingness to re-sign him and everything.
Yeah.
And he's repaying that. And this is a system. Obviously, he's ingratiating. He's got in with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's putting him in a position to make the plays.
Mm-hmm.
There is, for other teams, there's question marks about, yes, they don't know what the injury report truly is because,
True.
until they actually sign them and do their own medicals and everything,
Mm-hmm.
it's not common knowledge what somebody's medicals are. And from that point of view, there's an element of concern there. And, it may just be a case as, well, would he fit into somebody else's system? There are so many systems in this league, and he's not. The Cowboys, particularly now, they're looking to have these big beefy defensive tackles up front and let him flow to the ball by keeping the guards and the offensive tackles and the centers off him,
Mm-hmm.
and let
Yes.
him flow to the ball that way.
Yeah, definitely.
If Van Der Esch were to sign for a 3-4, predominantly 3-4 squad, you're asking him to actually go up and take on these guys head on, and that maybe isn't a scheme that would work for him. So
yeah,
he's maybe what you'd call a niche market for his services.
I agree. I think. Do you know what's funny with Van Der Esch? Is I actually think he's a generation too late. That if you think he was like that thumper type linebacker on a 3-4 defense, like going back to the noughties, this guy is a Pro Bowler, minus the injuries. Let's say that the injuries aren't in a particular aren't on the table, right? So it's a vacuum. I think people are talking about Van Der Esch being one of the best linebackers in the league.
Yep. I think he is, he does have the potential to be one of the best linebackers.
Yeah,
When he was
definitely.
he was drafted, there was talk the mold. He's a Brian Urlacher in mold, whatever. You
I
know,
see.
I
Yeah.
and obviously spending a year at least with Sean Lee and seeing how you go about dissecting film, all that sort of stuff. You know, he learned from Sean Lee, who again unfortunately suffered from a lot of injuries. But these guys, you could have taken these guys back to the 70s, and I bet you they would have fit in with Landry's flex defense perfectly. They would have picked that up, and they would have been contributing in the 70s and 80s. Just again, the problem here is that they've had so many injuries this time round. So
Yeah.
um,
And that's the big question mark as well, is when we're going to go through the first three guys, all three have the same big negative, which is durability. There's a
yeah,
question mark there. Now, the good news is that Van Der Esch with the whole neck issue doesn't seem to be a problem. I know, obviously, he missed time last season. It was an unrelated injury. So you
yeah,
kind of like go, okay. Year before, collarbone. So you kind of like going, okay, these are injuries that are kind of separate from what people are most concerned about. You can't help broken bones. There's nothing you can train on a field that will make your bones less breakable.
yeah.
So whenever it comes to a broken bone, I'm always like, yeah, okay. You can't say a guy is injury prone based on broken bones.
Yeah, and it also depends on which broken bone it is as well. I mean, if it was a broken bone in your arm, you cast it up, and you've got an extra
Yeah,
weapon to your arsenal.
yeah, that's it.
Um, but something like a collarbone, I mean, that puts the end of it to a lot of people in sport. There's one of the other sports I like at the moment is cycling as well. So Tour de France, you see some guys coming off and crashes there, break their collarbone, and they try and ride, but even that, I mean, just the jarring there, it's crazy. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I watch UFC. That's the literally that and rugby. Obviously, I'm Welsh, so it's going to be
yep,
rugby, But but like it's all similar injuries. You see the same things. So you did make an interesting point as well about the Hankins coming in, which leads to the Mazzy Smith signing as well. Which I think the two as so. The run defense, the run stopping last year was an issue. And I did
yep,
a tweet about it, about how bad things got during mid-season before Hankins came in. And Mazzy Smith is another one that's going to really, really help and shut things out. You're trying to make offenses as one-dimensional as possible. And that's what they've done with that. But what I feel the Mazzy Smith selection from the draft doesn't just help the defense. More than anything, it helps Leighton Van Der Esch because from Boise State, when you look at how they're taught and how they play, they're not taught how to take on blocks. They're taught how to avoid them. And I'm talking
yeah,
more specifically the linebacker core. So they're trying to move around blocks. And unfortunately, in the NFL, if you're trying to avoid blocks, you're just creating you're creating running lanes by doing that. You need to have a so what's important with Hankins and Mazzy Smith is because they're two gapping and they're taking up two spaces effectively, and they're able to hold up their guy and stop linemen, as you mentioned, breaking into the second level. That keeps guys like Leighton Van Der Esch clean, and once they're clean, they can roam in the box and they can just flow to the ball. And once
yeah,
they're doing that, and they're coming off the ball, it's simple and easy. You're seeing that effectiveness in Leighton Van Der Esch. There's some games where you're looking at it, and Van Der Esch is like the best defensive player of that game. There was certain games where you're just like, Van Der Esch is absolutely flying around you because his lateral speed, his side to side movement, unbelievable. Like for a guy that size, he is it's deceptive how quick he can be. And if you can just keep him unlocked in that way, you're doing more things again to stop the run. It's almost like a double-edged sword. So I think that's what's really important. And they've got 3 nose tackles now that they can tinker with.
Yeah.
So, do they want to keep the 3 and then they go a little bit lighter on the 3 tacks, or do they keep the nose tackles? So they've got a nice rotation of those guys there. Especially where Mazzi's still trying to, pick up the speed and the pace of the NFL game.
Yeah, I mean that's again when we were discussing it last week with Brian. I was sort of suggesting that the defensive line, that's where the biggest arguments will be during training
In
camp
numbers, yeah, agree.
as to who you cut down, who you potentially look for trade options with, and what have you.
Mm-hmm. I'm agreeing with you.
Linebacker, you've probably got a similar argument, but that's more from the point of view is you need bodies, and
Yeah.
are these guys going to be there as bodies?
Yeah.
But as you say with this defensive line, the way the defensive line's working, it should free up our linebackers, and it should make our linebackers that much better in run support at very least.
Yeah.
And if nothing else as well, they should be able to diagnose the play easier as well, because they're not having to worry about somebody coming towards them.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to drop into pass as soon as they recognize it, and that should make them a hell of a lot faster to the ball. So.
Yeah. And when it comes to linebackers defending the run, like the scouting term is always go slow till you know. And I've said it before on this show, and it is. And if you're able to keep your linebackers doing that, so it's body squared to the line, shuffling your feet, watching that ball carry, and then committing when you see him move to the hole or bounce to the outside. And that's what it's about with linebackers. But if they're trying to scrape or if they're trying to come off a block, especially like with the way Van Der Esch does it, there you go. You've perfectly allowed a nice running lane for guys to come through. So it's a double-edged sword by doing it. I agree. But let's talk about the next guy. Who's a bit of a sneaky player, because I was just like, well, that was a wasted pick for next year. Not wasted in terms of that we've wasted a pick, but more like a wasted pick for having a player for last year. It turns out that this guy does not care if he has a spine injury. He's going to recover that spine, and he's going to go out and play. Damone Clark, we're talking about from NSU.
Yeah.
Second year in. I mean, this guy, for the limited snaps he had less than 400 snaps, still made nearly 50 tackles and 16 defensive stops, but also had 2 forced fumbles. That's an unbelievable start for a rookie. It's quite obvious he's going to have an even better season based on he's going to have more opportunity. He's training in training camp rather than rehab, and he's with the firsts, he's with the coaches, he's in rooms. He's out of trying to be a human being, but more of a football player. But what do you think on Damone Clark? I mean, this guy was he wore a coveted jersey at LSU, so that tells you all you need to know. But what's your feelings on Damone Clark for this season?
I think obviously he should. He flashed last season, as you say. We weren't when he was drafted. You weren't expecting a lot out of him at that point in time. There wasn't talk that you'd see anything of him. You thought it'd be a redshirt freshman. It'd be a sort of redshirt year, much the same way as when we drafted Jalen Smith, and you didn't expect him to play at all. But lo and behold, halfway through the season, here's Damone Clark coming in, and due to other people not performing, namely Jabril Cox or whatever, Damone Clark was able to get on the field, and that experience that he developed on the field, working with, and he had a good tandem going with Leighton Van Der Esch. Now, when Van Der Esch went out, it did sort of drop off a little bit. You saw things like there was a play where obviously the the protection was that it was going to be a sort of Tampa 2 scheme, so he was meant to drop back into that sort of safety position in the middle of the field, and
Yeah.
he just did that, but it turned, lo and behold, it turned out to be a running play, so he'd taken himself out of the play because he'd gone
Yeah.
15, 20 yards down the field. With having a full season of going back and having a look at all this tape,
Yeah.
and again,
Experience is a big one for that.
getting the experience with that, getting Leighton Van Der Esch and the coaching staff to sit down with him and say, right, this is what your responsibility is here. Look at these keys. Go back and look at various bits of tape. And I mean, the resources that they have to them are so much better in the pro game than they are in college. They don't have time restrictions. They can, as long as they
haven't got classes to go to.
Yeah, if they're willing to put the work in and put the extra hours in, then that should make them rise to the top of their game. And these guys, particularly in Dallas, you really have to excel to be a linebacker to get a multi-million-dollar contract.
True. Yeah, they do like to just rotate those linebackers.
Yeah. And as soon as they've sort of priced themselves at the market, that's when they go off to other teams.
They've always done that.
Yep. I mean, again, we were talking prior to the show. Guys like Dexter Coakley, Brady James, all these guys, they ended up having to finish off on other teams because Jerry wasn't willing to open the pocketbook for a linebacker. So
it's just it just seems to be the Cowboys' policy is just rotate your linebackers, bring in fresh, and start again.
Yep.
It is an odd one, but I think, because you mentioned about, the work ethic, that's one thing. I think the biggest thing, and you see it in LSU as well, is that is probably Damone Clark's biggest strength, is that his work ethic is through the roof. Like, that guy is not going to quit. And I think that's going to stead him for a long career, as long as, the neck and spinal injuries don't cause any more issues. And I don't think they will. Fingers crossed, touch wood. But when you look at it, like we was talking, there's the work ethic with him, but he's got some good speed. He's got some good agility to him. He needs to, I think, if you're going to have any negative, he needs to just sharpen up his tackling technique, because there was a few plays where you see him falling off the tackle, and he's got to make those tackles. But I think as a second year, and I know we talked about mostly being in nickel defense, but as a will type linebacker, Damone Clark is perfectly suited for that. And when you think, you've got your Mike linebacker, if you like, with Leighton Van Der Esch, that gives, and although we keep talking that Micah Parsons isn't in this group because he's going to be that Leo type linebacker, you could kind of call him as well if you really wanted to, a Sam, if you're going to go down that road of formation and try and identify it. I mean, so in terms of all of this, I think it perfectly places Damone Clark this year to have an uptick in production, like big time. He's just got to make sure he continues to watch everything that's coming at him. Go through what things are coming at you, read, react, and go. And I think he's gonna have a good. And he's in camp, like you say. He's got a full season of training. He's going to have been doing training in the off season as well. Arrow's pointing up for this guy.
Yep, completely agree. And I mean, what you have to remember last year is that he would have been probably a second or third round pick if the Cowboys hadn't identified this injury with him. He didn't know anything. He didn't know anything about it. He'd gone to the combine. He was ready to do all the. He was ready to do all the drills. The Cowboys X-rayed him. Cowboys came back and said, "You realize you got a fractured disc?" And he's like, "Have I?" He says, "I've not." He's not experienced any pain or anything like that. And this is this. That just goes to show. And even when he was he wasn't cleared to play in training camp. He was there on the sideline. He was watching absolutely
Mental
everything,
reps. Yeah.
the mental reps. And, I think that's why you were able to see such a high performance out of him when he did finally get on the field and he was thrust into action as well. And obviously he pushed the lower players down. The guys like Malik Jefferson,
True.
Jabril Cox wasn't on the field, and there's a reason, because this guy was ready to play and he was, he was ready to show up, and you got a hell of a lot out of him.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jabril Cox. You were just talking about him. Still don't like the fact he wears a number in the teens, but there we go. I mean, it is what it is.
It's still taking a hell of a lot of getting used to having all these strange numbers. So
it's just find it odd. Like even with Parsons, I know he's going to make the number his because the type of guy he is, but those low like 10 and teens as linebackers, it's just you watch it like, oh, this is hurting my eyes. But anyway, another LSU guy obviously played Clark as well. Now, some people will say they'll make the argument for Michael Gallup, and people go, Michael Gallup last year didn't look good. He was all over the place. Didn't look the same Michael Gallup. Wasn't in sync with Dak. Making jumps for the ball at the wrong time. Yada yada yada. And you go, okay, right. But then the argument becomes, but he's still recovering from an ACL. You've got to give him another year. Let's see how he is in 2023 before completely writing him off. And people will go, okay, yes, I can understand that. If you're doing that for Michael Gallup, you've got to do that for Jabril Cox, especially with the type of linebacker that Jabril Cox is. So I've always said that Jabril Cox, along with a few other linebackers that were coming into the league, are like this new age, the new wave of linebacker that's coming in. Like these speedy off-ball linebackers that play like in the box, on the fringe, cover and chase type linebackers that are really rapid and quick. If that's the type of linebacker you are, and you have an ACL injury, there is no worse injury for a guy who's got those high levels of athleticism.
Yep.
It is literally cutting your feet away from you. So people are arguing about like, well, why isn't he's looking slow? Well, give him chance. Like, not all ACL injuries are the same either. Like, no injuries are the same. Plus, not all bodies are the same. Give the guy chance to, okay, he could have been out there, but just because he's now fit to be able to play doesn't mean he's football ready. Give the guy another year. Let's see where we're at now. If, however, which is on the flip side of my argument, we see in training camp and there is still this lackadaisical movement and he's looking sluggish and there's not that explosive and change of direction that we were getting in the past from Jabril Cox, then you're going to have to cut loose because he's not the guy he no longer is or was. So that's the way it goes for him. But give me your take on Jabril Cox, what you think the type of player he is and what he's going to be this year.
Again, as you talk about, it's a new wave of linebacker. To me, the new wave of linebacker is actually Darren Woodson from the 1990s. They could play safety. They could play, Darren Woodson was a linebacker in college, came into the NFL, deemed too light to play linebacker, switched him to safety, and he was able to do it all. These guys that are coming into the league now, they're, him, Overshawn, that we're going to be talking about, they're all,
he's next,
they spent time in the backfield, there's, in the defensive backfield, playing safety, whatever. They've then converted to linebacker, put a little bit of weight on, and developed that way. And, you've got that pass rush, you've got the pass rushing capabilities if you need. You've got the sideline to sideline, which you saw when Jabril Cox went and took Danny Dimes down on that goal line run.
Yeah.
But they can drop in coverage and they can be serviceable in coverage as well. And that's what you're wanting. You want an all-rounder with the linebackers. And you're seeing that with the new wave of linebackers that are coming in.
Yeah.
That being said, I mean, you know, even if he wasn't 100% healthy last year to play on defense or wasn't picking up the defense properly or whatever, it's slightly concerning that he only played 38% of the snaps on special teams as well. You would have thought get him playing special teams. There was a number of games where he was a healthy scratch.
Yeah.
So he wasn't even on the game day roster. That's a little bit concerning to me. That does lay a little bit of claim there, particularly as his injury was week 5 of the season, where Michael Gallup was much later in
Late in the
the
season.
2021 season.
Yeah.
So he should have been further down the. Again, as you say, ACL injuries are different for each player, and
Yeah,
especially Cox is probably 20-30 pounds heavier than Michael Gallup.
definitely.
So there's a little bit more torque on the knees, that sort of thing that you're talking about.
Yeah. And
But
especially like when you think the type of game Michael Gallup is playing, like the type of wide receiver he is. Yeah. There's
Yep.
not going to be that much in terms of movement that way. Not much torque to the side. There's going to be some, obviously, because he's running routes. But I think, like you were saying, there's a lot more weight to Jabril Cox, and there's a lot more of that turning and that twisting that you
Yeah.
see. It's much more rapid and much more faster, and especially when you think the type of linebacker Jabril Cox is, it's even more so again.
Yep. But I mean, as we say, this is his 3rd season. This is where you should be seeing, again, coming into camp, and he should be ready. He should take everything off, and he should be ready to roll for the minute the pads come on,
Oh yeah,
and setting everything on fire. I mean, he should be hitting the ground running, and staking a claim for a roster spot.
yeah. No, definitely. I mean, like I was saying, if you get to training camp, because he is one of the guys, because linebacker is so sketchy. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they make cuts and one of the players they bring in is linebacker, purely for the case of bodies. Like you were saying, they need, like, when you think like special teams is primarily linebackers and tight ends and those type of players on
Yep.
the field. So like you think they just need more guys. And if Jabril Cox, when you get to training camp, because he's somebody you're going to have to keep an eye on, that when you get there and you see that he just isn't looking the guy that we need him to be, and he's not the guy that he once was, he's not making the team. And they're not going to be patient waiting around for another year for that. So he's going to be gone. And that means then you're going to have to fill another linebacker spot from somewhere. But otherwise, I think if he is that guy again, you can get excited because he is an exciting player to watch. As that speedy off-ball linebacker. Like, I really think the Cowboys do not want to give up on him for sure, because there is just so much in terms of what he can do that the other linebackers, even behind him, not just ahead of him, what he can do that the other guys can't. It's just like, they don't want to give up on him because of like how specialist, how niche of what he can do really is, and it'd be, and kind of be like, we gave up on him, we didn't know him for 1 year of ACL, he's recovering the next shit, and now we're giving up on him. Like, what a waste of time. And I don't think they want to do that. So it's just something, he's one particular player on, like, I have post-it notes all around my screen, and he's going to be one guy that's like right in the middle of my post-it notes.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yes, but let's get to a guy you should know quite well, mind. It is, of course, Agent O from the Texas Longhorns, DeMarvion Overshown. This guy is again, he's kind of a little bit of the same breed, but I would say he is more of a J-Ron Curse. And I'm not saying that because he was a safety converted to linebacker, but I think that he is eventually going to take that role once Curse moves on and they decide not to keep him. I mean, the craziest stat I've seen is 46 defensive stops for Texas.
Yeah,
The Longhorns. I mean, that's just an incredible amount. I mean, like, if you did that in the NFL, like, people would be jumping through the roof because, like, that's just a crazy number. Still made 49 tackles, still made 3 sacks, still had 10 tackles for a loss. This guy, when you watch it, like a lot of people, I think, are making too much emphasis with him on how quickly he can get into the backfield. That is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. If you can get people in, but the Cowboys are not short on players that can get in the backfield. What they're short on is linebackers that can hold their own and get to the ball carrier. The good thing is that is like Overshown's speciality. Sure, he can make these crazy tackles and get to the linebacker insanely fast. He's good at getting skinny through the hole, and he gets to the linebacker at speed. I mean, like, you know, they call him the
yep,
human missile. He can get there quick. But I think the most important thing why the Cowboys have got him is his ability, his speed to get to the ball carrier, because he's just flying over there. But give me what you think about Overshown, how you think his
yeah.
season's going to go.
I think you've coined it quite well there. I mean, obviously, for him to be able to get speed, as you say, you go slow until you know. So he's obviously able to dissect what the play is going to be.
Yeah.
He's obviously, with the limited time that he was allowed to study film at Texas, he was able to pick up on keys on the offense. That should help where you pick that up and flow to the ball again and be able to hit at speed as well. Where he has a problem is, when these offensive line do get on their hands on him, and he has difficulty taking on those blocks and shedding those blocks. So that's something that we need to do, or he needs to focus on there.
Yeah.
But I think, as you say, you'll probably see him where Jaron Curse needs to be spelled. You'll see him coming on the field and being that sort of third safety again, stroke, probably be in,
The fringe box type guy.
or if you want to put it in soccer terms, it'd be probably a sweeper or something like that. You'd
Yeah.
probably see him as that sort of thing and roaming the field, just staking a claim and what have you. But I mean, the Cowboys have also talked they want to use some of that pass rushing skills that he has as well. So, he will be a jack of all trades, I think.
Yeah. I mean, because there is he did get 23 pressures, which when you think of the type of linebacker is good. It's a good number to that he had there. The defensive stops is just what blew me when I read it. I was like, what the, and you tie that with 49 tackles and. As well, when you look at the Texas Longhorns, they're not short of tacklers on the defense. Short of a lot of things, but yeah, tacklers isn't one of them. But I'm waiting for a comment to come through now because I've noticed he's on there.
Yeah,
He's already shouted at me today for a Texas Longhorns comment. When really I was complimenting the wide receiver core the Texas Longhorns have.
Well, you've only got another year, and then we're back to the rivalry in full flow as well. So, yep.
Yeah. But it depends. It depends where they're going to put them. It could be another year. It could be 2. Depends.
Well, I mean, they are talking. Obviously, we do have you in 2024 already. They've announced the home and away games, and we are playing you guys.
So that means they are in the same
Yeah, and the talk is now that they are going to realign it, and there's going to be an East-West split, and obviously Texas, OU, and Texas A&M will all be in that one conference together. So, or division together. So, yay!
I thought it's one of the saddest parts I know we've moved right off here, but one of the saddest parts of college is the Texas and A&M, right? I get why they did it, but it's just kind of like, come on, just like ignore all the past, get on with it, make it back what it was, because that's what the fun
Yep.
part is. The Texas, I can tell you now, Texas A&M fans and Texas Longhorns fans are both sitting there going, we don't want, Aggies are going, we really don't want LSU on our rivalry week, really.
Mm.
They're just sitting there going,
Yep.
But anyway, back to this. So I'm very happy with the, and I actually did a scout report for him, so went quite deep on him. And the good thing is and this was the first thing I seen when I thought about it, because there are players in the past that have tried to do it. Safeties that convert to linebacker, because the body types kind of almost, like when you think of some linebackers and safeties, their body types aren't that far apart. When you just, you need to put a little
Yep.
bit more bulk on for absorption. But really, they're not that far apart. But what does change is mindset. You've got to really think of things very differently from a safety to a linebacker. And that is usually the hardest part in terms of a player conversion. But what I noticed with Overshown is that did not happen. He literally flowed right into it. Went from safety and he's plodding along, he's doing fine, gets into linebacker, and it's instant. And I was just like, oh wow, okay. And to see that instinctual mindset come straight in, you're just like,
Yep.
all right, this guy gets it. And I think that's going to be a big thing that comes in for him going into his rookie year, because he's just going to be flowing right in. He's already, and a big thing is instincts with linebacker. You've got to be instinctual. Like, if you're not, one of the, like, we could mention his name, but I'm worried that we'll get flagged.
Yep.
Get into another argument. But we've had a linebacker on this team before who athletically was a beast, but unfortunately the instincts were lacking. And he did not last long because of that. So you've got to have the insight, and he's got it. So I think coming into this season, it's going to be very interesting to watch and to see how they utilize him, how they put him on the field. Because, as we mentioned, you've got your 1-2 punch. So what are you going to do in terms of the rotation when you need to put Overshown on? What are you going to be doing here? Because Jabril Cox is still a question mark. So how are you going to put him out there? How are you going to put him in? Especially if him and Curse are on the field at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure Dan Quinn's got packages that are, he's schemed up, and
A lot of subs.
yeah, and I mean, again, we were talking earlier, Jabril Cox is questionable for this season. If he's not showing it, then you show him the door, and you've
Yeah.
got a much younger version of him in Overshown, so you can bring him in for those sort of plays. But I mean, as I say, again, barring injury, you can bring him along slowly. You
Yeah.
can get him on for 2 or 3 plays, which was how if you remember, that's how they sort of introduced Jabril Cox. Jabril Cox was used spottedly in those first 4 or 5 games, came on to play against the Giants only in goal line sets and a couple of short yardage sets and that sort of thing. And that's when he made the impact by hitting Danny Dimes and knocking him senseless. And then there was talk that they'd bring him in for the next couple of games and add more to his arsenal, and you'd be ready to go by the end of the season. He was supposed to be, if he hadn't gone down injured, then you'd be talking that he would have been the next well linebacker there.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's gone by the wayside. You could see this happening in some respects with Overshown. That's that's the plan that they'll follow as well. And again, if there's talk of using him as a sort of outside pass rusher as well, then you're talking about bookending him against Micah Parsons or something like that, or even spelling Micah Parsons for those particular plays. So, as I say, I mean, I'm sure Dan Quinn has got plans for it, and it's just to make sure that you see how it you see how it works.
Yeah, definitely. Because he fits the mold. You know,
Yep.
Dan Quinn likes his speedy guys back there. He likes them to be moving around and be mobile. So that's interesting. But we got the last three guys: Isaiah Land, Devin Harper, Malik Jefferson. I think these guys gonna have to keep an eye on them. Devin Harper was on the field last year, so we kind of seen a bit of him on special teams. Got the Achilles injury and then got put onto IR. So he's got durability. He's in durability with
Yep.
linebacker. There we go again, man. But you know, you have to keep an eye on these three guys purely because there are so many question marks ahead of them. Even if you just talk about the front runners, the front two guys, they got concerns with injury. So you've got to, like, Land, I think, is a nice practice squad stash because he's not quite there yet. He's still got a bit of development to do. Devin Harper's exactly the same, man. He's really raw, you know, especially when you think of his age and like when you look in college. When you go back and look at it in college and you try and watch tape, it's literally all 1 year. You go back and watch it and you're like, it's this season again. It's this season again. It's all 1 year of production. So apart from that, I think Harper could be a sneaky one because he just needed time, he needed playing time more than anything, just to get experience and get up to speed, get playing, you know, because he's raw. Land just needs to work on a few things. Malik Jefferson is the big outsider for me because he's just bounced around leagues like no one's business, and it's trying to find himself. I think he could be a good special teamer. Me personally, I think with Malik Jefferson, he's like that type of guy, you know.
Yeah, I think so. As you say, I mean, he was a third round pick back in 2018 out for the Bengals. And he's
Bounced
just
around.
bounced around. He's been on 3 or 4 different teams now.
Yeah.
I think there was a spell at the Colts before he became a Cowboy as well, and it just hasn't amounted to anything. He's failed to crack on with anything, and it's just
It's instincts with Jefferson. And like as we were talking about, instincts is one of the biggest things you need for a linebacker, and you just see that his reactions and his instincts are very slow. And then he's always playing catch up. That's what you're seeing which is why he's bounced from team to team.
Yeah, and there's no guaranteed money for him. It's a 2-year deal, but it's all just plain base salary. There'll be incentives included in there, but you know,
emotional damage.
He needed one.
You can quite easily get away from him if he's not panning out.
Yeah.
The guy that I'm interested in is Isaiah Land. Now, Isaiah Land was a very good pickup as far as I can see. He won the Buck Buchanan award for the best national defensive player of the year in 2021.
Yeah.
You know, led the nation in sacks with 19 from the linebacker position.
Yep.
25.5 tackles for loss, 23 tackles for loss last season, 7 sacks last season as well. I mean, the guy's got skills, and again, it's very much like Overshown. He's shown the skills to get in the backfield and be disruptive in the backfield.
Yeah.
So it's maybe one of these diamond in the rough that you've picked up as well. That you know you've got him for a very good deal.
I've got him down as one of my sneaky picks, mate. I've actually said it in one of my articles that he's a sneaky picker. That you know, going back to the instinct things, this is a guy who's got instincts, really, really natural at the position, ideal build and size. Athleticism is good. What he is lacking is he's just small sized. He just needs to put weight on. He needs to get on. He needs to get on the weight gain. Get in the gym. Just get bulking up because he's just not big enough to play the position in the NFL. Like he's gonna get completely smashed up against you know NFL running backs.
Yeah, and I mean he'll take a few years, I think, or he'll take at least a year. I mean he's 6'4", 225. You really want him to be 15, 20 pounds heavier than that to be used for you know multiple plays in each and every game. You know, so
like at this stage, he's like more of your if you wanted to use him as like a rotational third down designated pass rusher, not a bad way to go. Not like for this year until he can put some weight on. Yeah. So sorry, just got a question coming. Which person are you referring to? Isaiah Land? We're talking about. Sorry, Elizabeth. So yeah, he's one of the sneaky players. And he did miss a year in college because of the transfer rules. Which I'm not a fan of. I get why they do it, but that needs changing. But like, yeah, I mean, like, and also the other issue with Isaiah Land, Isaiah Land, it was just the competition level because he played the FCS. He just needs to start, like they say that steel sharpen steel. That's what he needs. So he was a man amongst boys over in there. But I think he could, but more than likely I think he's gonna, because he just needs to bulk up and put on size. I think this year you're probably looking, unless we see bad things happen with the up roster guys, he's a practice squad guy for me.
Yep. I think he is, but I mean, obviously, you need to temper that. If he shows up obviously he'll be getting a lot of action in these preseason games. If he shows up in those preseason games, he maybe stakes a claim for staying on the roster, because you're going to have, or the Cowboys are going to have to juggle it some way to keep him around. Give him some guaranteed money to stay on the practice squad, but
he's the type of guy though that will. Do you know what I mean, Lon? He's that type of player where when you're in especially the early preseason games, he's gonna flash. You're gonna see him produce because he's just that type of player. He is above that. What I'm worried about is that he's not big and he's not got the bulk, the size. For regular season games. That's really all he's missing. Once he's got that up and he has a season working with the strength and conditioning and on the weight gain, you're going to see a very useful linebacker next season without a doubt. It's whether that he's still around by then, but we'll wait and see. But here we go then, Lon. Hit me with it, baby.
Right. Okay. So wait a minute. Just bring it back up. So if you're planning on going to a game outside of our Thanksgiving Day package, make sure you book up a Cowboys experience for the ultimate meet and greet, stadium tours, game tickets, tailgating. They'll work with you. You tell them when you're coming in, and they'll devise a package to suit as well. They'll give you stadium tours. They'll give you tours of the Star as well, where possible. And you get to meet players like Micah Parsons, Drew Pearson, Randy White, Ed Tuttle-Jones, Travis Frederick. Go there, take your autograph book, and you'll get them filled up quite quickly. So and of course, make sure that you say that we sent you, and you'll get some free stuff as well.
Free stuff, baby. Might be interviewing Travis Frederick next week. Not sure how that's going to go.
Good.
Wait and see. Might have to get Travis Jr. down to watch that one. So, but also check out the travel package, as Lorna's already mentioned, that we will be going to, and check out all the other content creators out there, from Dallas Cowboys' own podcasts and shows, Blogging the Boys, and all the other guys you can see on our Wall of Fame. But that is it for the linebacker position. So we will be back next Thursday. We're going to be looking at defensive ends. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten about them. Because it's probably, ironically, we're going from one to the other. So people say linebackers for the Cowboys are bad. Defensive ends, really, really good. So we'll go on a high. We'll start low and come up as we inch ever so closer to training camp, which is only a few weeks away now. So we get this wrapped up just in time for it. It's like we timed it perfectly. But as always, stay safe. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. And as always, Lorne gets the final shout. So give it away, mate. Give it away. Now.
Well, hope you guys have a great week. I'm dashing off up to the west of Scotland for the holidays next week, and then hopefully I'm back the following week. But I've also got to phone in for jury duty, so perhaps I'm going to be sequestered as I get a rather gruesome case or something like that. I'll catch you as soon as I'm back.
Have a good one, everyone.